You're listening to a Soul One podcast.
Taylor, this is both of our favorite kinds of episodes because we have a guest joining us this week.
Yeah, it really takes the pressure off of us. And anyways, I guess I have to be extra nice because he's my boss. So I have to say, yes, this is my favorite type of episode because not only do we have a guest, we have Father James with us.
Well, hello, everyone. Yes, yeah, nice to be here again. It feels like it's last year?
Last year, I think.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a summer drive-in kind of movie themed thing. I think
that was it. It was the double header, wasn't it? It was hopefully we'll have something a little bit similar with this.
Well, it's funny, Taylor, that you mentioned having to be nice because your boss is on there. It's so interesting how you say that when, we had those folks who worked on the Star Trek show come on, and you absolutely threw me under the bus with them. But
they weren't our employers.
That's true. They just worked on a show that I had recently bashed that you decided to tell them, hey, this is Mike's feelings on your show. Was
that the highest listened episode for the clickbait?
It's definitely up there. And it's something that of course Tyler Vance, regular contributor to this program, brings up quite a bit. That is one of his favorite moments from our show.
It lives in infamy. Infamy? Anyways, that's funny because that you brought that up, Mike. That never even crosses my mind. I forgot that even happened, but
wow, that's interesting. Okay, but anyway, it's just such interesting dynamics have shifted. Let's just say that. but yes, we're so happy to have your boss back on the podcast.
Yes,
that's fun. I think you behaved yourself last time, Taylor, if I remember.
Well, I still have my job, so it must have gone okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Is there any interesting Taylor stories you want to share with us that maybe the listeners might be interested in?
Heavens above. Well, Taylor and I often kind of talk about movies and shows. I mean, we catch up on what we're watching and what she's watching for this podcast, of course, but also, we'll talk about things that are going on in the world of Hollywood and films. And but I don't know. I don't know if priests are famous for having very poor memories and for not telling on what they hear, so I'd probably better stick with that line anyway.
Good, yeah. Well, there you go, Taylor. You're saved from whatever that was going to be.
Any hot takes that I have that would get me in hot water, Father James probably also has. So if he rats me out, he's ratting himself out. So that's why he's confession there.
And that is the trouble you get in on this show, Taylor. Is sometimes you have takes on things that our fans are just not on board for. So it's always interesting when you start talking about. Usually it is a movie, though. There's something about a movie that you just feel the opposite that everybody else does, and that's happened on the show a lot.
I just get fired up. I don't know what to say.
Well, let's dive into what we're doing this week, though, Taylor. Do you want to start the introduction as to where we're going on this wild ride this week?
Yeah, speaking of getting fired up and having hot takes, we have a Polanski movie on the docket today. So I was going to say unintentional, but I did throw it out and Father Quirk took the bait. So Father James has been gracious enough to come back for another Father James drive-in double feature. Originally, when we first pitched this idea, it was going to be another end of summer themed drive-in. So by the time this airs, Mike, it's actually going to be into fall, but it's fall in Ontario, so it's still hot. So I think the movies still apply, Father James. How do you feel?
Absolutely, especially given, one of the movies is set, during a hurricane, in the Florida Keys. And, this is hurricane season kind of par excellence right now, isn't it? So that one's very kind of seasonal for this time of the year. And Yeah, so I think that, and they can be enjoyed at any time of the year. These movies, because they're both so good. And I say that.
Everyone's everyone's still looking for that flavor of the summer right now anyway. Like I know it's like it's very hot, where we are, but I still feel like people are not letting go of summer yet, Taylor. So I feel like it's still
Except for the
kind of
pumpkin
hit.
spice people.
Is it pumpkin spice season
You
already?
would bring that up, wouldn't you?
But I actually don't drink pumpkin spice anything, but I think they launched it last weekend. But
That's too early.
anyways,
That's way
yeah,
too early. It's not
It's
it
even
is
been
way.
out for
October.
a while.
Wow. Okay.
Mid-August, they seem to bring it in now.
It's well sooner and sooner. We're going to be drinking it in April. Father James, will you tell us what 2 movies we'll be talking about today?
Okay, so yes, yeah, so we're going with a kind of noir theme. So one is kind of more in the kind of like the kind of classic noir period. So it's from the immediate post-war period. It's Key Largo, starring Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and Edward G.
Mhm.
Robinson, and and then the second one, of course, yes, Roman Polanski's Chinatown. From what, the mid 70s. I think it's 1974. I think it's the year of that one. So that's a kind of more of a kind of neo noir. A
Mhm.
homage to that earlier period, and both of them are quite interesting kind of takes on the genre. So, uh, yeah.
And Mike, had you seen either of these before?
Yeah, I saw Chinatown. I would have been probably just like early university when I got around to seeing it. Chinatown was one of those movies that we had the VHS at home,
Oh.
and so I always saw that movie title. Like I always saw, like I can see the VHS cover in my mind, but never actually watched it. It's just something I think my parents had, and when we were younger, it's like, it's not really something that they would show us. So I remember watching it a lot later, and then realizing, oh, that's that movie that I've seen this cover forever, on my parents' shelf. So I have seen Chinatown. Probably saw it for the first time in university. And then Key Largo, I had not seen, but I watched in order to kind of get caught up and where we were going here, because I've seen lots of Humphrey Bogart movies, but I had not seen this one. So that was quite new to me. But Chinatown, definitely, I've come to know a little bit later, and have seen it a couple times.
I saw Chinatown probably for the first time. Well, I've only seen it once. It's the type of movie that's very, very well made, very good, but I don't know if you need to watch it more than once. Father,
Really?
Father James, weigh in on this one. It's bleak. It's not an easy watch. I mean, it's easy to watch visually because it's absolutely gorgeous, but the
Yeah.
subject matter it's quite bleak.
Oh, definitely bleak. I mean, that is. I mean, there is a real contrast between the two movies in tone, isn't there? In terms of which is almost surprising. You've got the classic noir that actually has a kind of almost a lighter feel, certainly towards the end, and then the kind of the descent into kind of hopelessness that is the arc of Chinatown. So yeah, very bleak. Yeah, you don't kind of put that on for a nice evening in with your significant other, do you?
I
Definitely, I would
sorry, go
agree
ahead, Mike.
not. Yeah, I would agree not. But I think, Taylor, the one thing that I know we've talked about this at least once on the show, where sometimes you watch a movie and you go back because you're just like, it was so, the subject matter is so dense in a way that you're feeling like you're missing something by not going
Yeah.
back and reviewing it again.
Yeah,
So to me, this is one of those movies where I have gotten something out of it a little bit different each time I've watched it.
right.
I think that's completely valid. It's a pretty dense at its core, it's a mystery movie in the sense that, a private detective gets hired to investigate something which snowballs and becomes something bigger and we're along on the chase. So I think there's definitely layers to the plot that are worth watching again. To me, it's just I'm of an age now where I just don't want to watch depressing movies. Like, I want a happy ending, and this movie does not have a happy ending.
Ah, yes.
That old chestnut.
Yeah, you'll have to look elsewhere for that. But yes, that is something you've brought up, Taylor. That you're very much in a wanting happier, brighter movies recently. But that's a bit of a shift, though, I'd say.
Getting married and having a child has really made me boring, and yeah. I don't know. There's something, Father Quirk. Did you find when you have multiple children? When you started having children, did you find that your taste in movies started to shift, or at least like your engagement with art shifted?
I don't know. I've always I've always quite enjoyed kind of the really bleak kind of movies. And I don't think I've ever quite lost that. But I would say you're probably right in terms of that certainly I don't have the kind of the opportunity really to watch some of the darker movies that I might have kind of enjoyed as a 25-year-old. I'll tell you a story. There's one called The Celebration. It's a Danish movie, which is about, I think it's Danish or maybe Swedish, not sure, that we watched when my wife and I watched when we were in our, we were newly married. And it is just depressing. I mean, it is awful the way that this story unfolds. I won't give anything away about the plot because it is a wonderfully made, beautiful movie. But so dark. I probably wouldn't watch that today, though, to be honest. So I get what you mean. It's a movie I probably won't want to go back to because it was really grim. But it just, I'm glad I can say I watched it because it really was a lovely piece of cinematography and acting. Just really grim in terms of its storyline.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say that, like, I think it's fair that as we go through life, our kind of interests and tastes begin to change, and especially like what I think both of you are kind of pointing out of like what you are looking for, or what maybe the idea of you used to grab a DVD off the shelf and throw it in there. I always look at movies that way. Is it the kind of movie where it's like, oh, I would just grab this any night of the week and throw it on, versus a movie where it's like you're sitting down and committing to whatever it is you're committing to. And I feel like, Chinatown, regardless, is that kind of movie. And I could see and understand moving to a point where it's like, 90% of the time, that's not what somebody wants in their movie watching. So yeah, I can kind of understand that perspective.
I was telling Father James about how I sat down to watch this movie with Dan, a notorious hard critic. He has pretty exacting standards when it comes to movies, and I sold him on the fact that this is a pretty well-known movie. It's made in the 70s, so it's an older movie. It's going to be good, like well crafted, and it has it's so well known. It's quoted in other media and stuff, and so he's like, okay, I should watch. This is one I should watch,
right?
And we were about 20 minutes from the ending, and he turns to me and he says, this would be a perfect place to end the movie. It's so everything's resolved, and it's gonna have this is a happy ending. And I said, oh, you're in for it. We won't spoil it because this is one of these movies we when we're doing sort of retrospective episodes, Mike, or episodes where we're reviewing older movies, sometimes we will do spoilers because the movie's so old and it's like, come on. But this is one of those movies, because it's so iconic, I don't want to ruin the ending.
Okay.
Right.
And Dan didn't know how it was going to end. He kept being like, is this the reveal?
And is this a movie that you don't even want to say the title because that's enough of a giveaway?
Oh, this is Chinatown. This is Chinatown. That
it is Chinatown. Sorry, I thought you said a renowned movie.
No, we were sit down.
What movie are you describing?
Speaking about like how it's bleak, right? And how as an adult, and so
I was totally lost there.
Sorry.
As you were describing, I'm like, wow, what movie is this?
It was Chinatown. It was Chinatown. And although
it's Chinatown kind of line is one of those famous lines from the movie, isn't it? That keeps getting repeated through it.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's quite interesting, kind of, how it appears more often as the movie goes on.
Mm-hmm.
in the last 10 minutes, I became aware that, in fact, it kept being said, it's Chinatown. It's
Mm-hmm.
Chinatown. This is what happened. They're in Chinatown. And Chinatown's from the first, for the first half hour, you didn't hear about Chinatown almost. And then, as you go through, though, Chinatown becomes almost a kind of metaphor for what's going on in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
No.
what can I say? Like, it's my initial comments make it sound like I don't like the movie. I think
Yeah.
this is this is a very well crafted movie, if not like in the top 10 in my opinion. But
Yeah.
long time listeners of the show know that Roman Polanski, to me, he's one of the greats, one of my
Mm-hmm.
problematic faves. Like, he is just a masterful director. The shots in this movie, you just do not see this type of filmmaking anymore.
Oh,
And I know that
incredible.
makes me sound like maybe it makes me sound pretentious or an old fogey, but quite honestly, like, this movie is just so beautiful.
Oh, it's. I agree, I don't think that's being one of those. Oh, they don't make movies like they used to. Like, I think this is an example of how they don't make movies like they used to, because it's a craft that we're seeing on display in the way it's shot, the cinematography, even, I mean, down to the characterization and the writing. I don't remember offhand, but I thought this won the Oscar for writing, or maybe it was nominated and didn't win, but it was definitely, like, was honored for its writing. It's such a well written movie. I just think it flows so well. It's so interesting and intriguing. Um, where things go, as we say, I actually think there is a kind of poeticness to it, which makes it really interesting. But I can understand the sort of heaviness that this movie brings, where it's not just a sit down, relax on a matinee kind of movie,
Yeah.
or Taylor, it's not an airplane movie, as we say.
No, definitely. It's the opposite
No.
of an airplane movie.
No, I mean, because if you think of it, like it was made, it's Roman Polanski's first movie after the killing of Sharon Tate.
Mm.
It's the first one he made, and it's kind of post Watergate, and so the kind of the cynicism that kind of runs through it, in terms of and a kind of, so the Gitters character, the kind of the he goes from being this brash kind of private eye who's kind of making fun of the guy at the beginning of the movie. The guy who it opens
Curly.
on the scene, Curly, and he's kind of laughing at Curly, who is having this absolute crisis about what's going on in his marriage, and so he's smug and full of himself. And through the story, though, in fact, he finds himself, he thinks he knows what's going on. And, the it's Chinatown, kind of comment that keeps coming through, that he doesn't know what's going on at all. And that he is no longer, the smart aleck by the end of the movie, that he was at the beginning. He wants to try to kind of do the right thing, and it all falls apart. I mean, so there is a kind of, you're right about the kind of poetry of it all, but there's a kind of descent from a kind of smug kind of swagger into, at the end he's kind of bundled off. It's Chinatown.
Well,
Yeah.
he's in like a state of like, he's almost catatonic at the end of
That's
the
right.
movie.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. I'm not super familiar with Jack Nicholson's body of work. And
Okay.
sometimes he's one of these actors that to me has become like larger than life. Like, it's like when you think of Brad Pitt or the guy that Katie loves.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. They're like, and to me, when I watch, sometimes I like my problem with Tom Hanks is when I watch a Tom Hanks movie, I know it's Tom Hanks, and he doesn't become the character for me. Like, it's always Tom Hanks. And I'm watching this movie and I'm trying to think, like, is this good acting, or is this, I don't think it's poorly acted, but and because it's early in his career, it would be hard. I would like to compare something at the end of his career, but is Jack Nicholson being Jack? Like, is Jack Nicholson a shtick? Like, that's how he acts, or did he embody this character? Does that question make sense? Like, is he one of those debated actors where people are like, he is actually good, or is it just like, no, he's just Jack Nicholson?
I thought he was universally loved as a good actor.
Okay.
But I mean, I could be wrong in that. I do get what you mean. He has such a personality in certain
Like, I'm
ways
very
that
aware
he
it's Jack
is.
Nicholson.
Yeah, but I feel like he can use that very well. Because I've definitely seen performances from him, including this one, that I think are quite solid.
Yeah, I think he became a caricature of himself over the course of his career. So
Right.
these early movies that you get, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Hmm.
Chinatown,
The
you
Shining.
know, The Shining. You know, there's a greater kind of nuance to his performances. He became very shouty towards the end of his
Right. That's what I'm
career.
thinking of.
And the wild hair, and you can't
Mhm.
handle the truth, or the guy who was in As Good as It Gets, this
Yes.
kind of character. So I think what was the one, Witches of Eastwick as
Yep.
well. So he and I think over time people are, it felt a little bit like the Emperor's New Clothes when he would be on. So I would say I prefer his earlier material, where maybe he wasn't as established, and so actually had to kind of, he wasn't just phoning it in, which it felt.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's unkind, but I think he began to do that over time because he could get away with it. Just be a very loud Jack Nicholson, a bit like
Angry.
Nicolas Cage. That over
Hmm.
as his career went on, he became much more. And maybe that's because he was losing the plot, or he has lost the plot. But he became a caricature.
Yeah, and I think in terms of later performances, Taylor, like you brought up, I would say one of his later performances that was quite solid was in The Departed. Like I
Right.
think Jack
Right.
Nicholson was quite
Yes.
solid in that movie.
Yeah.
You know what I kept thinking while I was watching this movie, because it wouldn't be um you had me at skip it without me mentioning the Heathers.
Of
I
course.
thought I I was like, I'm like, oh my goodness, does did, is Christian Slater just always doing a Jack Nicholson, or was he doing a Jack Nicholson in the Heathers? And maybe that's like too niche, and you guys haven't seen the Heathers a million times enough. But literally, the moment Jack Nicholson started talking, I thought, oh my goodness, that's JD from the Heathers. And then I was second guessing everything I thought about Christian Slater. That maybe Christian Slater's not a good actor, and he's just been doing a Jack Nicholson impression his whole career.
I,
I like that.
this is a direction I didn't think we'd be going in.
I think
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I gotta watch Interview with the Vampire and Heathers back to back, because I
Mm,
don't think he's doing, like, to me Christian Slater has a pretty distinctive voice, and I do think he's doing like a voice in the Heathers, and I think it's a direct, I don't want to say rip off, but like a direct take from Jack Nicholson to Chinatown. But again, maybe I'm just I've lost the plot, maybe.
Mm. I might have to watch the movie again. I can't bring myself to watch Interview with a Vampire, so you're on your own on that
That's not a hardship for me. I'll take it for the team.
one.
And then, so anything else about
um,
Chinatown? I mean,
I
this, it could be a whole
I think,
episode about Chinatown.
let me just see, because I think one of the things I think is quite interesting is the um, are the women in both movies, actually.
Mm.
And so I do think that Faye Dunaway as Evelyn, I mean, there's she kind of, that's also quite an interesting thing to kind of watch with her, because she's also very cool at the first time you see her. You really see, and she's got it together, and she says you'll be hearing from my lawyer, the first time that she kind of turns up in the movie. And in fact, Jack Nicholson's quite flustered by that first encounter.
Hmm.
Um, but she also is falling apart through the movie too. She loses her cool. She's losing her grip as the movie goes on. And but she's also the one truly good person in the movie.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, she's the one person trying to do something good, that unambiguously good, because you know Gitters, Jack Nicholson's character, is in a sense he's annoyed that he's been tricked into doing into
The
what he
right thing.
you know, and so over time he begins to he starts to come around with it. No, well, I was thinking in terms of he's annoyed at the beginning, you know, the whole thing around
Oh, how he's kind of framed.
he's framed, yeah.
Yeah.
And so and everything kind of flows from this annoyance in him. He's not the guy who gets duped like that. Whereas, I mean, she's really quite an unambiguously good person trying to do something good, you know, as the movie goes on, and again is a kind of tragic, truly tragic figure then in terms of this movie. And you really kind of learn about her tragedy. Again, if we're going to say
Mhm.
we're not going to do spoilers, oh goodness, um, just anyone who's not seen it, it's a tragic thing to watch her kind of almost fall apart over the
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah, I definitely recommend anyone listening who's intrigued to just go watch it. I mean, I think you do want to watch a movie like this without being too spoiled, with kind of not knowing exactly the direction that it's going in. I remember when I first watched this movie, aside from just memorizing the VHS cover, I had no idea what it was about. So it was really interesting to walk into a movie. It's kind of a feeling I chase a little bit now, because I don't get, with so many trailers and social media, and you hear people talk, especially even on this show, Taylor will bring up things that we just hear about movies. So there's less surprises. I think the last time, or at least in my more recent memory, walking into a movie where I really didn't know what to expect, was a movie that I saw this summer, Weapons,
Mm.
where I knew absolutely nothing about it going into it. I missed the trailer that everybody saw, so it was kind of nice to recapture that. But yeah, every time I watch this movie, I remember the first time I watched this, I knew nothing, and that was really interesting to go through it that way.
Mm.
We do need to move on, though, because we have a second movie we want to get to.
Yeah.
As you said, Taylor, we could be sitting here talking about Chinatown this whole time, but Taylor, we don't have the time.
No.
No.
So we're going to talk about, and this is a word that for some reason I have a really hard time saying. Key Largo.
Key Largo, yes.
I don't have the tongue for it. So Father James, do you want to tell us a little bit about this one? Why you picked this one?
Okay. Well, just to say that there is a connection between the two movies, and that connection is actually John Huston, who plays Noah Cross in Chinatown, and rather a nasty character. So there's a little tiny spoiler for Chinatown, but he is the director of Key Largo. And so that's a kind of there is a little bit of a connection there. So this is about Humphrey Bogart's character is on a bus at the beginning of the movie, and he's coming down to visit the family of a colleague in the army during the Second World War who was killed. And he arrives at this hotel that's owned by the family in Key Largo. And when he arrives, he finds out that Edward G. Robinson and his gang are in residence at the hotel. And and he's a man who is still dealing, I think, with the effects of the war. And so you're watching him through this movie. So where you've got kind of Jack Nicholson, Jake Gitters,
Yes.
in Chinatown, who goes from being this guy who's brash and full of himself and thinks he knows everything. You know, he's cleverer than everyone else. Humphrey Bogart really kind of spends this movie really shying away from confrontation. He's given the opportunity to kind of be the hero at various points, and kind of backs away from it. And I think it's probably fair to say that like there is a kind of a wrestling with about the responsibility. Like does he what responsibility does he have in the face of evil? when all he really wants to do is just be left alone and kind of have peace. Because Edward G. Robinson is awful. The Claire Trevor. That scene where Claire Trevor is singing,
Ugh,
um,
horrible.
and she is just she's degraded by Edward G. Robinson in that scene. It's actually a very kind of powerful scene. It's again kind of very well shot. I think that's one of the things with the two movies is you've got two absolute kind of past masters when it comes to direction in
Mhm.
John
Oh yeah.
Huston and Roman Polanski. They both know how to kind of shoot a scene, how to kind of set it up in such a way to kind of really milk it for all the kind of drama and power that there can be in it. So I saw this before I ever saw Chinatown. I saw them both actually at the kind of University Film Society when I was an undergraduate, and like we would always have the kind of art house movies and stuff like that, but they would also show kind of classic movies as well. And so I saw them both actually while at university, watching these. But I saw Key Largo first, and fell in love with it as a movie back then. So it's a movie that I've probably seen maybe 4 or 5 times actually over my life. So, which is of course once about every 10 years. So there you go.
I've never seen this movie before. I love a good black and white classic movie. I found it quite enjoyable. Before I get sort of to my review, I would say I do have a plot point that I don't think is a spoiler, but I would love both of your insights into. So we're following along with this Humphrey Bogart's character who's obviously has a lot of demons from the war. And he's sort of comforting, or like he's visiting the family of a soldier that was in his platoon, and he's telling them like he's so brave, he was so great, blah 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 blah. And he tells a story about how he had been on the phone with him for 3 days straight.
Right.
He was the only person left, blah 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 blah. And then so you're like, okay, he's a great soldier, that's wonderful. And then there's a part like probably 3/4 of the movie through where the woman, I don't want to say love interest, but like the wife of the colleague says to him like, oh, he told me everything that you told me except the roles were reversed. And then they don't. So is he like, is that the filmmaker's way of saying like he was the brave one all along?
Yeah. So I think the point there is that Humphrey Bogart, they're saying, like, tell us about the boy. You remember it's his father, it's the colleague's father,
Yeah.
who is, he just wants him to kind of talk about what what he was like in the war. And so Humphrey Bogart tells this story about how brave he was, kind of spotting enemy movements, for the artillery, and they spoke over the phone, for all these days. And so he was making it out that he was the one who was keeping the guy, he was in touch with him, but it was the dead friend who was the hero. And she kind of accepted at that point, but then later on she says, no, he told me all of that, but you were the guy who was actually being brave. And I think and so you've got this, and I think as a kind of plot point, so you learn that, in fact, or it reinforces that Humphrey Bogart isn't this guy, or this kind of shying away from action.
He's not a coward.
Seeing him. Yeah, he's not a coward, like this isn't his character. So there's something else going on rather than simply he's afraid. I think that's what that is.
Got it. My question alludes to the fact that the script is grown up in a way that, again, to sound like an old fogey, scripts aren't grown up anymore. In both scripts, there's ambiguity. There's questions that characters ask each other that go unanswered. Dan mentioned that with Chinatown. He's like, why is he not answering any of her questions? Right. People don't talk like that. But the idea of this sort of this ambiguity, this very grown up script to me.
Yeah.
Like these movies felt like grown up movies, but not in a way that is like too like edgy or sex for the sake of having sex or violence for the sake of violence. Grown up in
Right.
the sense that it's dealing with real people with real emotions, with, you know, in high stakes situations,
Right.
and just well crafted.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I like the kind of point you're making, Taylor, about not having to just spell it all out there
Hmm.
and put it out there for the sake of it, and having your audience need to feel some uncertainty and mystery, and even, you know, what I talked about even the poetry of the language at times. Like I just feel this is sort of kind of the point I was making before as to why I find movies like this you can go back to, because you're just missing and picking up things and continuing to debate and discuss those points. Like it's a really, to me, that's a really interesting discussion. And again, I only saw this movie for the first time like this weekend, so it's not as though I really had an opportunity to dive into this more than once. I'm wondering, Taylor, though, because I might have missed it if you said this, for both of the movies today, had you seen them before, or did you sit down for the first time to watch them now?
I sat down for the first time to watch Key Largo, but I
Okay.
had seen Chinatown about 10 years ago.
Okay, so the same as me then. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remembered like the broad brushstrokes of Chinatown, but I couldn't remember all of the intricacies in terms of the mystery, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
So that's, I mean, that's kind of what was really great. I mean, about Key Largo was I again had no idea what I was going into. I
Right.
didn't really know anything about it, and I think to me this is another kind of movie that I'm thinking I want to watch this again.
Right.
I want to dive into it deeper because I know I've missed things. I know there's little things that I'm not quite getting or understanding, or there's holes that I'm sure aren't actual holes. And by watching it again and continuing to engage with it, I just feel like that's how you kind of get. That's how you know something's interesting, in my opinion. Is it's layered in the way that you were describing, Taylor. Of like, there's so much going on, there's so nuanced, and I think the way you're putting it is actually quite fitting to me. That is an adult script. We're not just going to put things out there, we're not just going to be crass, we're not just going to do things for the sake of it, we're going to make you listen and work and think and discuss and debate. And that nuance, I really love it at these kinds of
But you
films.
know, uh, Father James, I think you and I talked about this. It's layered. The scripts are layered in both movies, but they're also, in a sense, uncomplicated, if that makes sense. Like the movie speaks for itself, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
You can watch both movies as just kind of straight up kind of dramas and just kind of enjoy them at, at a kind of surface level. But, so Key Largo is a straight up kind of film noir, bit of an adventure. Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, happy ending. And it's all over, and you've had a great kind of, an easy kind of time. But there is they are quite straightforward, but there are big questions being asked there.
Hmm.
Because I think Key Largo, I think one of the things is the kind of the moral arc of both stories is almost kind of the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, as I said before, the kind of the descent into cynicism and a kind of loss of, of hope through Chinatown. Whereas Key Largo resolves with this man who's tried to avoid being forced into acting, being forced into engaging, to be involved in this kind of this situation that he knows is wrong. He can see, like that people are being brutalized in it, and he tries to avoid being drawn in, and eventually, and with the storm, the way that the storm functions, and as the storm resolves, in fact, so does his moral dilemma,
Hmm.
and he becomes the man of action at that point that she is, in a sense, kind of hinted at earlier. That kind of final scene, on the boat, that kind of boat sequence, he's become the man of action, and it's done. There's nothing sensational. So how you were saying about violence for the sake of violence, this is him acting out of duty. Like there is no kind of there's a kind of uh, a kind of workman-like quality about him at
Yeah.
that point. As he,
It's very
deals
functional violence.
with, that's right. It's not a kind of glorification of violence. He's a man who has, his indecision has passed, and he now has to act. And it's understated, that final scene. There's no kind of rage. It's kind of understated. It's kind of an act of necessity. It's justice. And so I think that's where it's got so many layers, because it's asking big questions and about who we are as human beings. So I think it is in one sense it is very straightforward, and in another sense it's asking big moral questions. I think both do, but they both come out in different places, and I think it's interesting, given the different context that they come out of. 1974. America has kind of lost its way in Vietnam. You've had the kind of Charlie Manson kind of killing of Sharon Tate. You've had Watergate. Whereas whenever this is, the late 1940s,
48
with Key
maybe.
Largo, is that the year?
It's in and around.
Yeah, there are men who've come back from the war, who are scarred by the experience, but generally things are pretty optimistic.
Yeah, they were in the right? They knew that they had made sacrifices, but they believed it was for the right cause, and it was for the right cause. So both these movies seem to be a product of the era, like the socio-cultural era that they were made in. But so Mike, I'm looking at the time and I realize that we have to wrap up. So why don't we just go down the line and we'll give it our final ratings.
Yeah, let's get our ratings in there. Father Quirk, do you want to kick things off?
Are we still doing the kind of skip it?
Stream it, skip it, airplane it, see it. You can make up your own. Taylor honestly just makes up her own, so you can do
make up your own.
Yeah.
I would. Okay, so are we doing both at once, or just because in a sense I kind of picked them, so I'm going to go. Anyone who thinks that these aren't worth kind of like seeing it at the movies on a big screen are crazy. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. To me, they're both see-its. I think these are exactly what we talk about, Taylor, that we're missing from the movies we always review. So to me, these are see-its.
Yeah, without a question, this is a see-it. If you get an opportunity, like if the screening room or a local independent movie theater is screening either of these movies, they're definitely worth checking out on the big screen. I think Chinatown in particular, just because of the color contrast and everything. But no questions, see it, both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Father Quirk, thank you so much for doing this again. We really appreciate having you coming on the show.
No problem at all. I love talking about movies, to be honest. And as I say, Taylor and I talk about movies at work, so I'm happy to kind of talk with you as well, Mike, about movies that I love anyway. So thank you for having me on the show this evening.
Yeah,
we'll soon.
Halloween's around the corner. We're some horror fans here, right?
Do Halloween special.
Father James, we got to do your special. We got to do your Hammer Horror Halloween special.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that would be so good. Well, you remember we were talking about kind of like the Fearless Vampire Hunters?
Yeah.
Again, Roman Polanski. We could do kind of another Roman Polanski one. We could really kind of
really cancel this show.
1960s vampire movie. What's not to like?
I know. Absolutely. It's a lot of fun.
No, honestly, I think we got to lock that in. We've got to do it. Our fans, you know how much our fans love Halloween shows, Taylor. They're always the highly downloaded ones. So hey, couple Halloween specials, we could make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Father James. I'll see you at work. But otherwise, we'll have you on soon.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, well, take care. Have a good evening, you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we'll wrap up this episode. We are, as everyone knows, we are back with weekly episodes. So thank you so much again to Father Quirk for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Go see some movies.
Thank you for listening to You Had Me at Skip It, a Soul One Arts Inc. podcast. This podcast is produced by Mike Shepard and Austin Spinner Summer. It is a project of Soul One Arts Inc. To learn more about Soul One and all the great work that Soul One is doing in the arts community, especially in film, theater, and other performing arts, visit soulonearts.ca. You can contribute to this podcast by visiting soulonearts.ca and go into the podcast tab. You'll find all the information on You Have Me at Skip It and how you can get your questions read on air each week. Thank you again for listening.